Is Nigeria's oil rebound enough to shore up its economy amid global market shifts? Good morning and welcome to another power-packed episode of Business Week. From Tesla's sales plunge over 55% in Britain and Germany to ShopRite's planned exit from Ghana and Malawi, and Ethiopia Airlines' strong revenue growth, this week's headlines captures changing tides in energy, retail and aviation. In tech, OpenAI launches its new ChatGPT-5 model, giving users access to its latest AI breakthroughs. Later, we'll take a deep dive into Lagos's housing market, now at a critical crossroads with a 3.4 million unit deficit and a widening gap between luxury supply and affordable demand, and unpack what it will take to make home ownership a reality for more residents. If you missed the week's biggest business stories, don't worry, we've got you covered. I'm Abby Olawi. We begin with the week-on-week commodities performance as at Friday, the 8th of August 2025, with oil prices falling on Friday, heading to a weekly loss on a tariff-hit economic outlook. Brent crude was down 4.09% on a weekly basis to $66.85 a barrel, while US WTI crude was at $64.16 a barrel, down by 4.86% from last week Friday, the 1st of August. Now a look at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. At the end of last weekday of trading, a total of 2.12 billion shares in 35,036 deals, corresponding to a market value of 35.42 billion naira, was traded. Now, compared to last week's NGX trading day, yesterday's data showed a 98.13% rise in volume and a 1.59% gain in deals. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is 92.21 trillion naira. Let's now take a look at the weekly performance across African markets. Starting in South Africa, with Johannesburg Stock Exchange closing at 100,855.19 there, marking a rise at 3.18% week on week. In Ghana, we saw positive movement with the index rising on a weekly basis by 5.56% and closing at 7,386.31. In Kenya, the Nairobi Stock Exchange closed upward by 1.41%, with an index ending at 161.19. Now, finally, Morocco's Mazi closing there at 19,818.76, up by 1.27% on a weekly basis. To European markets now, we see stock markets rising sharply after news emerged that US and Russian officials are working on a deal to stop the war in Ukraine. The regional stock 600 rose by 2.09% on a week-on-week basis, with the German DAX index up by 3.07% from last week Friday. Now, France's CAC 40 index gained 2.61%, while the UK's FTSE 100 rose by 0.30%, and Spain's IBEX 35 advancing by 4.94% on a weekly basis. Finally, let's take a look at Wall Street as at Friday, August 8th, 2025, with stock rising on Friday, putting the three major averages on pace to round the week out with gains. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average trading at 1.01% higher than last week there Friday, while we have the S&P 500 rising by 1.90% on a weekly basis, and the Nasdaq Composite advancing by 3.08% week on week. And now for some other top stories from around the world. Oil prices slipped in early Asian trade on Monday after OPEC Plus agreed to another large production hike in September. Now, OPEC Plus agreed on Sunday to raise oil production by 547,000 barrels per day for September, the latest in a series of accelerated output hikes to regain market share, as concerns mount over potential supply disruptions linked to Russia. Now, this move marks a full and early reversal of OPEC Plus's largest tranche of output cuts and a separate increase in output for the United Arab Emirates, amounting to about 2.5 million barrels per day. India says it is targeted by the US and the European Union over its imports of Russian oil after US President Donald Trump, in an overnight social media post, threatened much steeper tariffs. India began importing oil from Russia only after traditional supplies were diverted to Europe following the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022, the country's foreign ministry said in a statement on Monday. Saudi Arabian oil company Aramco reported a 22% drop in second quarter profit on Tuesday, saying it's looking to divest assets as crude prices drop and its debt mounts. Now, the firm's generous dividends, a key source of funding for ambitious plans to cut reliance on oil, will be about a third lower this year. Aramco reported its 10th decline in quarterly net profit to $22.7 billion in the quarter through June from $29.1 billion a year earlier. Tesla's new car sales plummeted in both the UK and Germany in July, according to industry data published on Tuesday, extending a protracted European downturn for the company. Now, data published by the UK Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders showed that Tesla's new car sales dropped by nearly 60% to 987 units last month, down from 2,462 a year ago. In Germany, sales fell in July, down 55.1% from the same month in 2024. Now, the number of Teslas sold in Europe's largest economy over January to July, meanwhile, plunged by 57.8% to 10,000 units. Still on Tesla, the company's board has awarded CEO Elon Musk an interim pay package of 96 million shares, which is worth about $29 billion, according to a filing on Monday. The company said in a filing that the new package will include shares that vest in 2 years, as long as he continues to be CEO or in another key executive position. Now, this award will be forfeited if the legal battle over his 2018 compensation ends, with him being able to exercise shares from that package. To technology now, OpenAI on Thursday announced ChatGPT's 5, its latest, most advanced large-scale artificial intelligence model. The company is making GPT-5 available to everyone, including its free users. Now, OpenAI says the model is smarter, faster, and a lot more useful, particularly across domains like writing, coding, and healthcare. Let's take a look.
Good morning. 32 months ago, we launched ChatGPT. And since then, it has become the default way that people use AI. In that first week, 1 million people tried it out. And we thought that was pretty incredible. But now, about 700 million people use ChatGPT every week and increasingly rely on it to work, to learn, for advice, to create, and much more. Today, finally, we're launching GPT-5. GPT-5 is a major upgrade over GPT-4 and a significant step along our path to AGI. Now, today, we're going to show you some incredible demos. We'll talk about some performance metrics, but the important point is this. We think you will love using GPT-5 much more than any previous AI. It is useful, it is smart, it is fast, and it's intuitive. GPT-3 was sort of like talking to a high school student. There were flashes of brilliance, lots of annoyance, but people started to use it and get some value out of it. But with GPT-4, maybe it was like talking to a college student. Real intelligence, real utility. But with GPT-5, now it's like talking to an expert, a legitimate PhD-level expert in anything, any area you need, on demand, that can help you with whatever your goals are.
The Bank of England voted by a fine margin to cut interest rates from 4.25% to 4% on Thursday, as the central bank resumed what it describes as a gradual and careful approach to monetary easing. As it turned out on Thursday, the 9-member MPC voted by a majority of 5-4 to reduce the key interest rates by 25 basis points rather than keeping it on hold. Now, the British pound rose by 0.5% against the dollar after the decision. Still in the UK, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves must raise taxes immediately in order to plug a fresh £50 billion hole in public finances. According to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, UK government finances have been hit by slow economic growth, a weak jobs market, and the cost of Labour's U-turns on welfare spending. Reeves is now on course to miss her borrowing targets by £41.2 billion. To consumer markets now, Africa's largest grocery retailer ShopRite Holdings is pulling out of Ghana and Malawi as part of a broader retreat from underperforming African markets. The South African company said on Tuesday that it has signed agreements to sell 5 stores in Malawi and received a binding offer for 7 stores and a warehouse in Ghana. Now, this move follows earlier exits from 5 African countries. ShopRite blames the withdrawals on currency instability, inflation, high import costs, and dollar-based leases. To aviation now, Ethiopian Airlines revenue rose by 8% in 2024-2025 financial year, aided by higher passenger numbers and additional routes. Now, the state-owned carrier, Africa's biggest airline, saw passengers' numbers increase by 11% to 19 million in the financial year that ended July 7th. Now, revenue rose from a year earlier to $7.6 billion, but growth slowed from the 15% recorded in 2023 and 2024. South Africa on Monday outlined support measures for local companies that will be hit by a 30% U.S. tariff this week, according to exemptions from some competition rules and financial support facilities. It also dismissed speculation that its failure to negotiate a lower tariff was because of its local affirmative action policies, which U.S. President Donald Trump has criticized. South African officials say the U.S. tariff could cause tens of thousands of job losses, especially in the agriculture and car-making industries, as Trump pushes to reshape global trade in favor of the United States. Nigeria's crude oil production surged past 1.8 million barrels per day in July, surpassing its OPEC quota of 1.5 million barrels per day for the first time in months. Benga Komolafe, chief executive of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, told delegates at an energy conference on Monday that Nigeria's current oil output now averages 1.78 million barrels per day. Capital inflows into Nigeria surged to $5.6 billion in the first quarter of 2025, representing a 67.12% increase compared to the $3.4 billion recorded in the same period of 2024. Now, this is according to the latest report from the NBS. This figure also reflects a 10.86% rise from the $5.1 billion reported in the fourth quarter of 2024.